Welcome to the Sidebar, a book club for nut buddies. I'm David.
I'm Gabe. I'm gooned up tonight.
And I'm Capitalissimo. I don't need to masturbate because I'm married and I have a full and fulfilling life.
That's what he tells himself.
Cope and C. And today we're discussing NUTCRANKR by Dan Baltic, published by Terror House Press. And coming up, we have Incel by Arxhan or Arexon. So read that if you're interested. So yeah, we're here to discuss NUTCRANKR by Dan Baltic. And today we're going to, as is our process, we're going to start with the generalities, spoiler-free summary, our impressions, having just finished the book.
Have we
then we'll dive into a more detailed.
Have we ever done a spoiler-free summary? Because typically I just jump straight into the spoilers.
You do. Me and Gabe are well behaved, sir, and we always give a spoiler free for Last Free Man and for Millennium.
If you're afraid of spoilers, close your ears to my voice.
This is a book that's not too messed up by spoilers, honestly. It's pretty much, if you like the voice, you're gonna have a fun time, and if you don't, you're gonna not enjoy it.
You're a bundle of sticks if you don't like this book.
Yeah, I think we ought to pretty great time.
I mean, it starts in media res and the implication is that he gets his fucking dick destroyed. So, anything that starts in media res is, spoilers are already there, right?
In media res, if you know what I'm saying, bro. Irration. I'll just give my quick summary, and then you guys, if you could give just a overview for someone that maybe just Googled the book title and stumbled across this, and then we'll dive into the more detailed review. But in terms of writing style, in terms of inspiration, I actually have not read A Confederacy of Dunces. So I think, Cap, I know you've read it. Gabe, I don't know if you've read Confederacy of Dunces.
No, I have not.
I got to tell you, both of you guys, when you read the late, great John Kennedy Toole's A Confederacy of Dunces, you will feel like he copped the entire fit of Dan Baltic's NUTCRANKR. It will feel like a book written yesterday for all time. It has aged miraculously well in the world of online reactionary tradcaths screaming about obscure philosophers. I believe, was it Epictetus in Boethius? It was Boethius in Confederacy of Dunces that the protagonist Ignatius Riley was very into. I actually don't. I have heard other people talk about NUTCRANKR in the context of Confederacy of Dunces, and I don't think it's entirely appropriate. And I think Baltic actually does something that's really cool and is very different from Confederacy of Dunces, even though it is about like this obnoxious outsider character. But yeah, I mean, this is so NUTCRANKR is a story of the misadventures of Spencer Grunhauer, a sensitive young gentleman who is very, very based at heart, but is ruled by his baser impulses and will do absolutely anything and put up absolutely any front necessary in order to sort of get by in society. So he's extremely untrue to himself socially, and he's also very bad at interpreting social cues. He's probably an actual spurg, but definitely maladjusted.
And I think the better part of the book is interpreting social signals that Spencer misses. Starting from chapter 1 into the end, it's pretty much you reading between the lines. And in terms of writing style, I don't know what author I'd even compare it to, having not read Confederacy of Dunces. I've heard him.
Both are starting very, very handicapped, not having read Confederacy of Dunces.
No, I got Don Quixote vibes from this, actually, or a little bit of Lolita, or like Nabokov style in Lolita, just a tad
Posting illegal images, Spencer.
That extremely Lolita right there with the pool scene. But the writing voice is a very tight third person where you're trapped in this sort of corkscrew logic of this crazy individual who is sort of turning himself around his own logic, and you can see him persuade himself sort of in real time about how, you know, becoming a sadomasochist is somehow the trad cath way of succeeding and dominating the Davos daddies. So if that kind of tone appeals to you, if that kind of humor appeals to you, I would say, to me, this is an easy recommendation to anyone that would probably stumble upon this. I would say go ahead and pick it up, read it. It's a really fun read. It stays strongly in the humor zone throughout the entirety of it. So go in with that mindset, and that would be my recommendation. How about you guys? Do you have any, I guess, qualifiers, someone debating whether they want to read it or not?
Well, with NUTCRANKR is kind of a glass cannon of a novel. It has one beat, and it does it phenomenally well. But if you do not like that one beat, you will hate it from page 5, and it will not get better for you. But if you love it like me, like this novel, Ryan Gosling is mentioned in the first 5 pages. Keats is referenced. Who else? Ernest Junger is referenced. And so this book is the literally me novel. I related. This was
it is the literally you novel.
I am literally Spencer. Yes.
Yeah.
I love this novel because it's literally a mirror made out of words. And so take that for what you will.
I mean, I know who you are from recording this podcast for many hours, and I was just like, this is fucking Gabe. This is Gabe the entire book.
Being a beautiful person.
Fucking Coomer.
Although my spanking technique is a lot better, by the way.
I'm sure that your internal monologue is exactly the same.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, I would say this is you know, of the books we've covered, and I don't really want to like jump into a tier list, but of the books we've covered, I'd say this is probably my second favorite after Mixtape, Hyperborea. But I mean, this is a tight book, and this could have been traditionally published by a completely normal publishing house in a different, less weird time period of our society.
The spousal redistribution system. I think that part may have been cut out.
No. You haven't read Confederacy of Dunces, but like this could have been published in the 80s or 90s, and you know, obviously there would have been things that were completely absurd and anachronistic, and I guess it would have qualified as cyberpunk at that point, but content wise it would have worked just fine. Not to denigrate Terror House at all, but you know, they're a small press, but the writing quality is there. Baltic's tone is tight. His voice is very consistent. I did not get any sort of impression that it was autofiction. I've listened to the New Right podcast, which is the author Dan Baltic's podcast, and you know, he doesn't speak in any way close to the character of Spencer Grunhauer. Certainly not nearly as close to Spencer Grunhauer as our own Gabe, but one of the, I guess we should get into sort of the timeline of the book, right? Because I mentioned that it's in media res, so it starts in the middle of the action, and the sort of sections of it are given by dates. So the first chapter is in September of 2019, and we find our protagonist in prison trying to crank out a nut right out of the gate.
Mm-hmm.
He is imagining women from his past, and he is not able to achieve erection, but is making a valiant effort nonetheless. And he's sort of working through his mental working through his both his fantasy and his justification for why he needs to absolutely do this in a prison bunk in the middle of the day. And his cellmate Tiny comes in, having promised previously to destroy his balls if he catches him jacking off again. Spencer says something to the effect of, can't we reach some sort of compromise? Tiny says, nope, you already had your chance. And then we of course flash back into the main timeline where we see Spencer in college in April 2009, making a complete shit of
Elliot
himself.
Rodger-esque origin story.
Oh, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So,
dude, this part was great. I love the tutor scene. You get so much out of the tutor scene. Is like the demo level of the entire piece. Really?
Yeah, it's the Deus Ex Liberty Island.
Yes, it's the intro. It's the intro.
Yes.
The rest of the book will go basically like this. It's the microcosm of the NUTCRANKR.
Yes, it's pure comedy, but there's also a second layer depth in there as well.
I mean, now would be the time to get into the whole the subtext is the text sort of thing, because something that is really really unique and very consistent throughout NUTCRANKR is that Spencer is completely unreliable. His internal interpretation of events is completely unreliable, but it's also obviously unreliable in a way that's very unique, because typically when you have an unreliable narrator, you kind of have to put things together. But because we aren't autistic, we understand that what is actually occurring is crystal clear. The subtext of the story, the things that are actually happening in the external world outside of Spencer's head, they're crystal clear. It's never a question. You know that these women aren't fawning all over him, that they aren't spiraling into fantasy with Spencer, that people are behaving the way that any fucking person behaves, right? And so it's really unique, and it's difficult to explain in a more explicit way than that you have a completely unreliable narrator, but a completely crystal clear subtext.
It's a crooked look at a completely straight line, basically.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe it. That is a very, and I think that Baltic deserves credit here. That is a very technically difficult thing to do, right? That is that's an impressive feat to carry off for a full length novel. It's not something that is the case in say a Confederacy of Dunces. Ignatius Riley's behavior is outrageous, and he knows he's being outrageous, and he thinks he's in the right. Like, he's not autistic. He's just an asshole. But Spencer is deceiving himself every step of the way, in a very consistent way.
Instinctive level.
No, yeah, he is coping and seething constantly. And he is completely Spencer is completely inconstant in his desires. In one moment he'll imagine himself, marrying and having a gaggle of children with a woman, and in the next section, and think that he has a shot in hell of doing such a thing, and then in the next paragraph, she'll be a venomous harpy. So.
And often the way it's written is you get lost in these trains of thought. And so that's, I guess, another way of a qualifier if you would enjoy it or not. Often not a ton of stuff will happen in a chapter. You will just chase down these rabbit holes that you're describing of how women are fantasizing about him, or how he is justifying some behavior in a weird way. And you will follow him every step of the path down this sort of hilarious rabbit trail of how it makes sense in his world, and you get to just be along for the ride.
Yeah. I mean, you follow the train of thought. You see how he gets where he's going. But you also realize what's actually happening every step of the way.
Yeah.
And he never changes. His character, the time skips, but his character, well, other than the end, obviously, but his character arc is a straight line completely.
Actually, that's a big debate I have with you guys, if he changes at the end. Actually, my argument is he does not change at the end in the least. Sorry, spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoilers.
There's definitely argument made.
So after the prison scene, we flash back, and we go to April 2009. We open in Nora's Tudor home. So one of Spencer's great loves, his professor Nora, is
Nora Katz.
Yes, is the Nora Blossom is hosting a end of year party for her students. So the whole class is there. Spencer arrives unfashionably early with some
expensive. What he has a specific term for it? Overpriced vodka or overpriced rum?
No, it's a whiskey. It's a scotch. Yeah, scotch.
Yeah,
it's scotch, but it's also like not actually top shelf.
It's Glenfiddich. Yeah.
Oh, Glenfiddich, which is fine, but it's not like he's not busting out the Glenmorangie or anything. But not Glenmorangie. What the Glengooley Blue? That's a. But
no, it's Glenlivet.
Oh yeah. There we go. All these fucking Glens. Fuck you, Scotland. Britain was too gentle. But anyway, so he brings some scotch, and everything that Spencer, of course, does is interpreted by him as being incredibly classy and charming, and he gets there early and sees his professor getting ready for this party with her students, and he's just sitting there getting fucking ripped on scotch before everyone else shows up, and imagining himself as like the head of household and her in this domestic capacity, which she obviously has no interest in him in such a way, and does not reciprocate these feelings even in the slightest. So,
well, there's a tad bit of a debate to be had there. There's an inch of a debate.
You think she was horny, Gabe?
You are autistic.
I want to hear Gabe.
You are Spencer Grunhauer.
No. I'll explain all right? I'm telling you, there's like the ending of the Tudor arc completely changes the interpretation of this entire novel and this entire scene. But you continue on. All right, just continue the sense that.
Okay, so the other students show up. Spencer starts thinking about some of these sort of more stereotypical bro characters as comrades in arms, men who could be his lieutenants, until he gets too ripped, and it becomes clear to the reader that if Professor Nora is going to be sleeping with anyone, she's going to be sleeping with the fucking Chad, not with Spencer.
Josh, or whoever it is.
Yeah.
Actually, can I butt in here? There's such a strategic genius to this chapter in particular. I believe this is just the opening main chapter after the intro where he's in prison. He strategically blocks off every attempt at empathy you may have, because I'll admit, I'm kind of I'm a soft-hearted guy. I will try and connect and say, oh, maybe he has whatever. Every time you try to say, well, maybe Spencer's misunderstood, he has a very strategic roadblock in your way. And the one that had me fucking laughing my ass off on this one, the first time I really busted a gut, was him in the bathroom. Okay, so he has the conversation and says he confesses his love to Nora Katz, this professor. she says no, and he starts crying for the first of like 8 times in the novel. He cries like 8 plus fucking times in this novel. He goes to the bathroom to clean himself up at her suggestion, and then he starts to, and this is what I really made the connection, he starts pouring her fucking lotion down the drain.
Expensive cosmetics. I'll teach her.
And breaks her toothbrush.
For no reason. Like, literally, he's just this, like, overweight guy in a sweater. Just packed his gut in a sweater. With his teeth gritted.
No reason. No, wait. No reason. She literally broke his heart. What do you mean?
So true.
The whole scene in the hallway.
How dare she?
She did. I'm telling you, she did. Unironically.
Teaching Odysseus.
Yes. They literally, no. Her whole relationship.
The subtext was crystal clear to the audience. I was wrong. I didn't
No,
I didn't consider the possibility that Gabe was also reading this book and that he is an autistic Coomer.
Gabe Core.
No, you fell for the red herring. You read it like a. You gotta realize she spends months with Spencer. He spends months with Spencer talking about the Iliad, and she talks about there's a sexual erotica where she talks about she's attracted to both Hector and Achilles, right? He's looking at her perfect porcelain breasts.
No, don't correct him. Do not correct him.
I don't speak Greek. All right, Achilles.
I don't either, but I do speak English.
But notice, she says, I'm attracted to both Hector and Achilles, openly. Now remember, Spencer, the way he does on a narrator, the good thing about Baltic is he slams down, he puts borders, so it's not ambiguous. His interpretations of dialogue is ambiguous, but not the dialogue itself. He doesn't make up words. Like Spencer doesn't hallucinate words. Yes. He just interprets them like an autist. So she literally says, I am attracted to both Achilles and... who's the other guy? The guy
Hector.
Gets dragged.
You said it like 4 times.
Hector, yes. Hector. So she says she's attracted to both of them. She's open to multiple sex partners, right? And she's married. She's already married. And she spends multiple times after class talking only to fucking Spencer. Right?
According to Spencer.
Okay, go ahead.
He could just be...
No. She says we spend...
a pest.
No. Remember, she also says, yeah, I love talking to you after class. I always want to be in touch with my students. In fact, she even says, I'm still a student myself. I want to stay a student. Right, and that moment gets a different meaning throughout the party. Because think about it, she's a grown-ass woman, right? At least a decade older than him, right? So it's like, so at least she's made of porcelain skin, decent-sized breasts, flat ass, according to Spencer, right? So she's built like a classical Greek statue, right? So it's like a metaphor. And the thing is, the metaphor between the woman torn between 2 worlds, right? The woman she's destined to be, the fertile woman, and the woman she is living in the Davos Daddy world, right? What he calls the Davos Daddy world, the modern world, right? So this grown-ass woman is playing beer pong, right, with students, with some of them maybe even underage students, playing beer pong. And one of the students, Spencer claims touches her ass, right? And he gets he whites knights. He goes full simp for her.
He does white knight.
Yes. And then he says, how do you think your husband feels about this? And she turns away. She doesn't even say anything about her husband. She orders her 2 goon squad gremlins, a goon squad as in like a little henchman goon, not the other kind of goon.
Thank you for clarifying,
to deport him from her house.
Our guy goons.
Oh my god.
Yes. No, the Batman kind of goon. So I was making sure. But so they kick him out, and you think, okay, he's a delusional lunatic. But one of the goons literally bends down to Spencer and says, and I quote, her ass feels really, really good, and walks away. So it is revealed through the dialogue. Yet again, Spencer does not hallucinate dialogue. He hallucinates the interpretation of dialogue, not the dialogue itself.
Yeah.
So in reality, Spencer was fucking right.
So it's a direct, honest truth with his translation clearly marked. I agree, and that's one of the things I think that's so tactful about this is that it's a fallen world where these people are legitimately, like, everyone in this book is pretty reprehensible to some level, but then Spencer himself is probably the most reprehensible of all. And so it gives you this interesting...
Disagree.
Oh, come on.
Obviously.
Everyone's life would have been better if they actually unironically listened to Spencer, right? And they just had sex with Spencer. Or unironically.
Based. Okay.
No.
Everyone was his harem member.
Listen, he has a few flaws. He has some flaws, all right? Okay. Even Jesus bled, right? But there's this beautiful... When I was reading that scene in the hallway, I reread this
Spencer
scene.
Grunhauer. Comparable to Jesus.
Yes, he compares himself. He mentions Golgotha. He mentions it, and it kind of makes sense, right? Because in that moment in the hallway, that was his moment. If you remember, Jesus says to one of the guys who wanted to join his posse, he said something along the lines of like something, sell all you have and follow me. When Spencer offered himself to her, plainly and openly, the Apollonian, right, truthfully, right, because I was wondering, because he uses Dionysian, he's a Nietzsche fan, but he describes her house as a den of Dionysian villainy, right, Dionysian as a negative, and I was confused with that. If Spencer read Nietzsche, he would know Dionysian is a good thing in Nietzsche, but I realized what was the problem is that he wasn't fully Nietzsche-pilled. He is innocent in here. This is his origin story. He tried to be honest with her. He tried to honestly say, sell all you have and follow me. Yeah. Or there's another one, Kierkegaard, right? Kierkegaard invented the idea of the sad clown. The clown, there's a fire going out in an opera house, and a clown says, there's a fire going on, and everyone just laughs, right? They don't actually listen to him because they think he's a clown. In a lot of ways, Spencer is that clown. He's the clown who knows the truth, but everyone thinks he's a clown. Right? So she denies him sex. She denies his sexual advantages. Won't even let him touch her. But the homosexual buff Giga Chad, she lets him grope her up her ass. She's playing beer pong and letting men grope her. She doesn't deny the groping, by the way, and throws out Spencer. Right? All the women, despite this like shallow layer of critique, supposed critique, like Cap claims that Spencer is supposed to be somehow like a character of parody or a character to be mocked. Yeah. In a lot of ways,
I'm loving this because it's not changing my mind, but it is making me think lots of things about you.
It's literally like the conversation I had with my farmer where you started going off about flat Earth, and I was like, "Damn, dude, I'm blue pilled. I'm not ready for this level yet."
Dude, how else are you supposed to interpret this? The thug literally bends down and says her ass feels really good. He did grope her.
He was teasing him, dude. He was bullying him.
I don't think so.
At the very best, right? Assuming that Spencer saw, in fact, what he saw, and he wasn't just shit-faced.
I don't think shit-faced excuses it, dude. It's still third, and so I think it's true. Direct dialogue is true. I think we got to treat it as true.
So Nora was gonna fuck the Chad, and not fuck Spencer ever.
Yes. Okay. Oh, fuck.
Or at least
let
him get away with shit. Let him get away with stuff.
Yes. A man she has nothing in common with, by the way. Purely, she is a shallow beast. She is a Nora flower, or Nora whatever the flower.
Blossom.
Right? She's completely shallow. Yes. And Blossom. Yeah, Nora Blossom, right? At the end of the day, what he says, it's the asshole, right? The asshole is the one who's correct. You can argue under the modern morality, Spencer is supposedly an asshole. But everything he says about other people is almost 1,000% true. But your gut instinct to his wisdom is to unironically think what he's saying is wrong because of the way he says it. Because he's an autist, right? Hence the clown trying to explain, hey, there's a fire going on, right? Because look at the audience of Dan Baltic. We know his politics. We know he's in a dissident scene. And when he talks about Davos and like monarchy, we're all monarchy respecters here. So the only way to interpret that is that he is giving a second layer of meaning, a double layer of meaning. The ironic Chad, yes, right? It's the
No,
yes. That's the only way to interpret this.
I have a rebuttal. So I plan this for later, but my feeling is that he's correct about some stuff in a general sense, but his reasoning is very self-centered, and so I guess the way I interpreted the novel is you're supposed to interpret as a self-examination of, am I adopting these viewpoints in a self-aggrandizing way? Am I saying we need a new aristocracy because I should be an aristocrat? Is that your viewpoint?
Even though I have 4 glasses of liquor every morning and I'm living on mommy and daddy money, and all I do is post on 3chain.
Am I doing this? Yeah, exactly. Am I doing this serious self-critique that this guy is not doing? It's like a sobering look in the mirror in a way. It's a comedic one. It's hilarious in that way, but it makes you look in the mirror and say, am I this dude sometimes? And I think all of us are a little bit. And so it's a great book because it makes you think about it that way of, how much am I Spencer Grunhauer and how much am I not? And how could I be less of a Spencer? Because the way he views people is so self-serving. And the end of the novel is like to me is the crux of is the pinnacle of that point, is that he pivots on a point into we'll just go ahead and skip all the way to the end for a minute. He becomes becomes a grifter. What's the term?
He's a podcaster.
De-radicalization expert. Yeah. He becomes that Jewish dude that goes on about white nationalists on Joe Rogan or whatever and talks about, how you shouldn't be this or that, which, fine to an extent. Like, don't be joining an insane, who's the people with the skull masks or whatever. Don't do that shit,
he
obviously.
Becomes the Believer. Remember Ryan Gosling's movie The Believer, where he's a Jewish neo-Nazi? But he radicalizes himself.
I never saw that one, but I could imagine it.
Literally,
and that's. I guess that's the crux of my argument of Spencer as a character. That's within him from page 1. Like, he is self-centered and self-serving, and so the pivot to that is just one logical exploration away, rather than bound in a sort of concrete moralistic belief. He's very it's a very relativist point of view.
Yeah, no, he's inconstant in his morality, and yes, he'll rationalize anything.
He is a Don Quixote without the morality of having a Dulcinea, right? Because what's the difference with Don Quixote? Don Quixote is obsessed with. He is the Spencer of his day. He reads nothing but classics. He has money because he's a little bit of a landlord in bumfuck
Don Quixote
Spain.
Read nothing but fantasy. He read genre slop.
Yeah.
Yeah, he read chivalry. He read chivalric tales.
The Song of Roland was not considered slop. It was the Song of Roland was a genuine piece of like Frankish literature.
Like Don Quixote was reading fantasy stories. At best, he was reading. At best, he was reading like historical fiction. At best.
Well, in part 2. Well, yeah, but the point being is, if you notice, Don Quixote is extremely chaste, right? He doesn't. It's not even a sexual thing with Dulcinea. It's a purely romantic thing.
Yeah, it's chivalry.
And with the difference between, and the thing is, Spencer does not have that. He lives the things he has read. It's detached. Ironically, postmodern, like Foucault, except one of the postmodernists he wants to shoot. Right? Basically, he hates Foucault. Right? Dave is right in the sense that he he himself is a fallen world. He is like a torchlight of civilization, but it's a torchlight made of like cat piss and battery acid. It's not very good lubricant for lighting fires, but it's the best we've got.
I would argue, no, this thing, I don't think he is the torch. Like, I think I would argue the point is he is not the torch. He is someone that has adopted these beliefs in a self-servicing way. And that he's asking you, Dan is asking you to reflect and say, am I adopting these beliefs in a self-serving way? And then could I drop them just as quickly as Spencer drops his belief in, say, sadomasochism or any of the other like dozen beliefs he picks up and drops about, female breeding patterns or whatever chapters he drops on NUTCRANKR.
He plugs it in to like be trad and based. Oh, being gay is based because Achilles was gay.
Yeah,
right?
It's completely exactly. Right. I sucked that guy's dick for history.
Yes, I'm connecting with. I'm converting like the Greeks of old. You know the ones I mean.
But that is true, because yet again, he doesn't have the chastity or the will of a Quixote. He's a gooner. Instead of Quixote reading like beautiful novels of chivalry, instead he has like a Pornhub subscription, right?
Yeah.
Basically, that's the problem, right? Because the Nora even says he's intelligent. He is extremely intelligent, right? The problem is that he is objectively autistic. He probably is clinically even autistic, right? A bit narcissistic. Yet again, he has some character flaws, right? The best heroes always have character flaws. But
oh my god,
he's a hero.
He's a protagonist.
No shit.
That doesn't make you a hero. I just want to pause this literary conversation a little bit and say, I really appreciate coming into this. I thought that there wouldn't really be anything to disagree about or really dig into, but Gabe, you threw me a curveball here, being so very much yourself and identifying so strongly with Spencer Grunhauer.
Listen, I'm being objective,
of
right?
course you are.
Yes, but I'm being objective here. I'm doing a pure reading from the text. I'm being pure T.S. Eliot here, right? From that scene onward, right, of knowing for a fact he only interprets things a little bit like charismatically. He's a little bit of eccentric, right? He interprets things eccentrically, yes. But everything that is said to him and everything he sees, he doesn't hallucinate. I can't remember a single time where he hallucinates something that isn't actually in front of his eyes. Right?
Yes,
so
the only place where
he
may have in fact been drunk is about Alex groping Nora's butt, but that it seems like he did in fact see that.
And when you think about it, he's confirmed to be able to have sex at least 3 times a week. So even from a hedonist standpoint, because Nora chose, she didn't choose like trad. Well, who would be the trad? Hector or Achilles? I think Achilles, actually. She didn't choose the trad Achilles.
Hector is the trad one. Hector's clearly the trad one. Yeah.
Is he? Oh.
Yeah, because he's like with his family.
He's a husband.
Yeah, he's a husband. And he goes home to his family. Yeah.
Well, Chastity's pretty trad too, and Achilles was like
the least chaste motherfucker.
Okay. The point being is,
and also Spencer subscribed to the idea that Patroclus and Achilles were lovers. So, like,
well, that's later. That's later on. That's when he
that's early. He mentions that.
Oh,
yeah, he mentions that early on. Yeah, and then he circles back to it in the last chapter. But
it breaks your mind, right? Because I had the same reading as you until the very end, and then I reread the chapter, and she mentions wanting to get fucked by 2 dudes, right? Hector and Achilles, right? Two different moral characters and 2 different values, right? A lot of people say Hector is more of a better character than Achilles, right? A lot of the normies think that, right? So when you take this alternative reading, you realize even from a sexual standpoint, she would have been better served by Spencer because he can fuck at least 3 times a week, and she's actually of his intellectual quality. She's an intellectual match. Alex talks about the fucking Bachelor. All they talk about is like soap operas on the couch, right? Nora claims to be a student. She's like, oh, I love learning. Oh, I'm such a student. I'm a teacher, but I always want to have relationships with my students and love of literature, and I love talking about. She says this, but in reality, she is also the delusional one. She says, oh, I'm just a student. No. She rebuffs the intellectual genius of Spencer, and she just plays beer pong and talks about fucking like wokeness with the black chick, right? And then soap operas and plays beer pong. Right? She is infinitely more shallow, right? When you look at this entire scene, that Tudor house, I was going to make a joke of a longhouse. It's not even a longhouse. It is a fun house. It's a fun house of mirrors, right? That scene, because even at the end, that fundamental moment changed Spencer. Fundamentally, a lot of the payoffs near the end tie back to the Tudor house, right? That woman made him. He even talks about this, about how women caused the downfall of man. He even calls her his Eve. In a lot of ways, in the patriarchal view, Nora is Spencer's Eve, because he gets actively worse from here on out.
I'm speechless. I agree that they're all flawed, and that Nora Katz is, I would say, in my opinion, she's probably the least flawed of everyone in the novel. We haven't moved beyond chapter 1 yet.
Oh, excuse me, chapter 2. Let's be fair here.
So true, fam. This is chapter. We're flying.
All right. So after he is punched in the stomach and kicked out of this party for making an ass of himself with his professor.
You mean being based?
Yes, obviously being completely justified. And we jump forward again from April 2009 to May 2016, where Spencer has been working on what is called the Capital P Project. And the project is something that he is posting to 3chain, obviously a reference to 4chan. And it is basically him writing a series of essays, what he later calls a treatise, on various ways to improve the world. Sort of a blog series, and it includes such things as like incel favorites like assigned wives, or what were.
No, it's not. It's not necessarily assigned wives. There's a different. He explains it a little bit.
Yes. It's something with maybe one more epicycle on it. But help me out. What were some of the other ones?
There's the King for You and Me. He has a chapter. Apparently, it's 10 to 20 pages. I believe the manager says it's a long section on divine right monarchy. He never really goes into it, but he is a monarchist. And the thing is, it is the spousal distribution system that gets him in the most hot water.
Right?
Obviously.
Yeah. Women as property didn't help him out there. So he was writing all of this. He was writing a bunch of like what we would interpret as reactionary posts on a company laptop, and his OPSEC,
foul, bro.
his
I've been there.
His OPSEC was trash, and he has had this. He's had a coworker named Laura. Yeah.
Laura.
He's had a coworker named Laura who he refers. She's tall and caked up like a motherfucker, but so she's a big and curvy woman, and he has interpreted their most likely entirely collegial relationship as a blossoming romance. It's pretty clear that wasn't the case. I'm going to argue, Gabe. And
she wasn't asking for it, Gabe.
And she asks him, shortly after, his internal monologue says that they're likely to be wed, and she's going to become a breeding cow for all of their offspring.
Beautiful.
No, because she has very fertile. She's built like a battle wagon. She has very fertile hips.
Yes, a battle wagon.
Like he talks about fertile hips both times.
No, she's like I said, she's caked up like a motherfucker. So she asks him to come into HR, and of course he gets shit canned for his bad OPSEC, and he then hangs around outside for a few weeks and does some light stalking before eventually finally not cutting his losses basically, and being fun employed. So he starts working more on the project and is still attempting to date. Is not having much success until he signs up for
it's Kink Life.
Kink Life, which is Fet Life. It's exactly Fet Life. So it's basically a BDSM and kink online social media thing, and he meets Crystal.
And there's an interesting subtlety here where he transitions into being a full-time gooner. Like, I didn't even notice it very much until in hindsight you see him mentioning how much he's gooning, he's getting on Kink, and the mental corkscrew you go through of hearing him explain how it's hilarious where he explains how I'm going to enlighten these people. Somehow sadomasochism is the most right-wing belief because it's like male over female, at least in theory.
No, it's very Nietzschean. No, it's
John Normanian. Yeah, John Normanian.
I real quick, I want to come back to the HR scene because that's one of the first criticisms. Not of Spencer, obviously, no, but of Baltic. In the HR scene, because he gets it's actually not even a criticism. It's like a happy version of a backhanded compliment. It's because my criticisms of, she says, we'll take it to HR. I'm like, let's go, right? Because he gets taken to his boss. It's not to HR yet. There's a time skip, but then he quote unquote stalks Laura, right? It bumps into her on a street.
He waits outside of her work for her to come out so that he can stop her on the street. And then, like, I get that it's not his like intention to stalk her, but what it was stalking.
Hey, I want to see this woman on the street. I'm going to talk to her. He talks to her once, and he doesn't talk to her again after that.
It was implied that he was hanging out there for a while, and that he had finally like decided to stop her. But anyway, go on.
Oh, yeah, well, the point I was saying is I wanted to see him in HR. A lot of the things, I got tiny bit blue-balled. It's more like a very funny skit happened, but it's a skit rather than a complete show. So I'm like, fuck, I wanted to continue the dialogue. Like, same thing with Laura, right? She turns around and walks away, right? Instead of having the back and forth about the spousal distribution. Because he says, do you know how hard it is? You can go on Tinder and fuck any guy. And look at me, I'm an incel. Basically what he says to her, right? But in like his usual Chad's like flowery language, right? And I'm like, there's going to be a back and forth. But no, she calls him a perv. Everyone turns around, stares at him. She walks away. So the HR scene and that scene, the dialogue ended a little too short for me. Mm-hmm. That's the compliment is I wanted more. That's the criticism. I wanted the dialogue and the banter to be longer.
I had the same feeling, especially with the sex party reference that comes at the BDSM sex party reference that comes later. It's a difficult complaint, but it's like, yeah, I could have easily done with like 2 or 3 more chapters. I think it would have been great to fill in some more of the detail. Not that it's lacking, but there could have been some more fun stuff in there that I suspect there was some drafting of that was probably cut.
Oh, I would love the fucking like B-sides because the prose itself, just the technical writing, is very good. A lot of alliteration. I love marital molasses, the steaming swamps of the vagina in its dark forests.
Oh baby,
the way he describes vagina, dude. Vaginas, the thing is, he rarely even uses the word vagina. The dark forest. Vaginas, they don't smell. They steam with erotic, right? He is a prose master when he describes the breasts. The breasts are transcendent in this novel. Spencer is not an ass man, by the way. But I'll get more into that
except
later.
For that
Dave,
one
you can continue your point.
I had a point I wanted to bring up. I have a complaint. If you're listening to this, Dan, put out your hands. I'm going to put down the ruler on your knuckles now. I think there was some bad semicolons, particularly in the first quarter of the book. Later on, I didn't notice any issues, but there was a couple questionable semicolons. I would suggest the author or someone in the publishing house take a look at. I can give specific examples if someone's interested. I don't want to bore anybody by talking about, this is an independent clause. This is a dependent clause.
And yet here you are.
Yeah, here I am. I can't help myself. I'm sorry. I am
the grammar Nazi is just aching to come out. The blonde beast of grammar is coming out right now.
Semicolons are one of those things that he does. I'm pretty positive. I bet you anything. He wrote this and then he like read more about it as he wrote and he cleaned it up as he went. And then just no one ever cleaned up some of the earlier ones. It's not, I bet you 90% plus of people will never notice it, but there's a couple of dependent clauses that appear to be semicolon to me. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm more than happy to admit I'm not an expert, but worth checking out. That would be one of 2 fixes I would recommend for this book. speaking of, do you guys want to hear the other? It's related to not the text at all. It's about the cover. Do you guys want to talk about that?
Sure. Well, we can review the
cover.
physical object of the book.
Yeah, the physical art of the book. I would just say, I think this cover art does a disservice to the book itself. That's my official.
I agree.
David.
I agree.
Stance. Yeah, I was scared of my wife seeing this book.
I was hesitant. I was hesitant to buy this book because of the cover.
And my wife saw
and
it.
I also had to explain it to my
Me
wife.
too.
I got
she
so
literally
Longhouse.
called me out. Did she say anything to you? Do you get Longhouse?
She was just like, what the hell is this thing? And I was like, it's a book for my weird internet thing. Don't worry about it. She's like, why does it look so
helps.
trashy? And I was like, oh, because it is. Don't worry about it.
Listen, she has the pussy hat, all right? It's the pussy hat.
But she doesn't give a shit about it.
I looked into it. The artist that does it is our in-house guy at Tear House, and he did the Pussy book cover, which actually I think is fitting and good. Yeah, by Delicious Tacos. He did another one I can't recall the name of, and he did this one, and I just think this one's not fitting.
I believe that the lady on the cover is supposed to be Crystal, and if it's supposed to be Crystal, why does she not look like a sack of potatoes?
Because he obviously traced it from like Billie Eilish. I swear to God, this bitch is modeled after Billie Eilish, except little smaller titties and a less little Down syndrome face. But other than that's Billie Eilish.
Yeah, it does look like Billie Eilish. But I mean, I don't know. It seemed like.
I guarantee you, this scared off sales is my point. I think it's a great book. I have two recommendations. I guess I would leave with whoever is responsible or has any influence on this. Is one, do a semicolon pass, just Control F, search semicolons, double check, reread the rules, double check.
Really,
I think
on
in the first quarter there's like 5 or 6. Yeah, it's not. That's for us grammar Nazis. Number 2, put a fresh cover on this thing. You can do AI art. I don't care. Anything that's semi-attractive, has like a gooner or a silly picture. And Confederacy of Dunces has pretty shitty cover art historically.
Dude, first edition's great. First edition looks like a fucking noir.
What's the first edition? Is that the guy he's like a cartoon?
They're
The
all
one with the parrot?
like with a they're all a cartoon. No, it's Ignatius with like a saber, with like a a saber and a hot dog, looking like a big old creep. It's great.
But actually, I disagree. I'm going to disagree, all right? Because he's from New York. This is very Dime Square. I think the cover fits with the tone, the story, the mood. It's called fucking NUTCRANKR. I mean, are you going to put a classy cover? Is it going to be a Barnes & Noble classic cover or a Penguin classic cover of NUTCRANKR?
Everything should be published
pornographic
in the format of Penguin Classics. Just go for it, guys.
Actually,
now that you've said it,
I would love to
it,
see
right?
what Dan Baltic would do. That is true. I kind of want to see a Dan Baltic Penguin Classic version.
I would pay extra for that. Yeah,
dude, he can get like Fen de Villiers, the sculptor, the dissident sculptor and painter, a futurist NUTCRANKR nudist painting.
I'm not picky. Those are my two key recommendations. Everything else I have is generally just like loving, really enjoyed it, and just variations on that topic. I just looked at the cover art that you mentioned, Cap. That first one, extremely Kino. The one I was thinking of was the one where he has the bird on his head, which is like a bit of a variation, which is not as cool. Yeah, I think it's second or third. Anything like that would be cool. There's a bazillion things you could do. So I'm not picky. I would just say something that you wouldn't be scared of your girlfriend or wife seeing and thinking you're looking at a porno.
Absolutely. And I acknowledge right now that I'm a bit longhouse by it, but whatever.
Yeah,
it's reality. She can listen to the video. You have video proof. You did it for the bros. All right, this is a guy thing. She can listen to this. Your man is secure.
Well, Mrs. But yeah,
Mrs. Cap.
Mrs. Elissimo.
Gabe, would you do the
yeah,
crystal
do the
arc
crystal
for
arc.
us since Captain the first one?
You got a big one.
The crystal arc. Okay, the crystal arc. She is like the femme fatale of his life, right? Like it's very Humphrey Bogey. It basically he meets after the unfortunate situation with Laura, the hyper-fertile woman who hates breeding, right? Another contradiction like Nora, right? So he goes to a restaurant he had a previous date with 3 years ago. The same waitress is there, but she doesn't remember the date. He tries to like bring it up, but she doesn't remember the last time he was there, right? So they agree to meet at this restaurant at 8:00. She, I think, is an hour and a half late. She has bolt on these things goth girls have on like her nose that reflects a lot.
Cheeks.
It's in her cheeks. It's very reflective. It's very reflective. It constantly reflects light. I like the little prose touches like that. She's wearing a nice. She's very pudgy, oily skin, pale skin, but not like the porcelain queen skin of Nora. It's more like ghetto, like cum. It's like a.
He completely beats down this girl from page 1. I love it.
Yeah,
Crystal as just trailer trash chick.
No, she's not trailer trash. She calls him the lumpen proletariat, right? She's from the docks. She's Irish. Her name is Crystal Clancy, and he kind of Rapunzel, right? Because he says locked up in a castle. It's like so oily skin, dirty bleached blonde hair, and ugly face, very fat, but not fat in like a nice voluptuous way, but fat in a pseudo right places, like half inflated fat. But she has an excellent, transcendent, heavenly, like case of milkers, right? She is a verified milk truck, right? And this is the thing with the breasts. He constantly wants to be pulled to a woman's breast. With Laura, right? He's sitting in a chair, and his boss, his Davos, this is a man. He is from a highly reputable liberal arts college, all right? And he is being talked down to. Right, liberal art college, highly respectable liberal art college is like said like 1,000 times.
Well, yeah, and anything that
gag.
he's associated with is aristocratic and like of very good quality for the price, or what have you.
Was it natural
premium
for a criminal
liquor.
Present? Yeah, from the more highly esteemed liberal arts college. It's said over 18 times, actually.
Yeah.
But where was it? Oh, yeah, so if you notice, so she stands up, and he can smell her vagina. It's misty, it's steaming, right? But he doesn't want to even go towards the vagina. With Laura, when he's distressed, he wants the women in his life to come hug him and put his face into between their breasts. It's a pseudo-Freudian thing. It's the mommy GF thing, right? Same thing with Nora. So he has this heavenly thing he even calls them transcendent orbs, right? So he desperately wants to get his hand on his girl's milkers. Now they talk a little bit, and this is the other criticism, which is kind of it slightly touches my usual criticism of SNL sketch, only slightly. Right, because he met this girl on a BDSM blog and talks about how much he wants to spank her and whip her and yank her nipples and shit like that, right? But he talks about him being a writer and how much he's into Nietzsche. And she's a full shit lib. She's like, oh, Nietzsche, wasn't he a misogynist? And of course, a Spencer, every time he's called out on his political beliefs, he Machiavellianly, like, talks shit lib talking points.
It's not. It's an incredibly generous way to put it. He is not being Machiavellian. He is walking that. He is walking that shit back so fast. No, the way that he speaks to other people, right, is pretty normal, right? Like his dialogue, his actual dialogue, is very, very normie tier. And he's just like kind of just a basic kind of nerdy dude. But the dissonance between that and his extremely like overwrought internal monologue is pretty funny. And every single time some of the internal part comes out, he has to he immediately code switch back and like walk it way back, because he's not because he's not willing to.
Yeah. But it's for Machiavellian reasons. His internal monologue is like, "Oh, I should be open to my beliefs, but the Davos, I have a destiny far greater, and I have to live another day." Right? He always says it in terms of battle and conflict.
But that's his justification.
Yeah, he's just dishonest.
I think he's cowardly.
He's cowardly, and he's just justifying it. He's just justifying it to himself.
The same way he justifies
literally anything.
The same way
he justifies like beating off to like help him do work on the project and make the world trad. So therefore, I need to beat off to incest porn. Like that's
which is the mirror in the face of like, okay, I'm on Twitter all day talking about how I'm a Nietzschean Superman. My profile picture is some guy lifting 1 billion pounds, but like the reality, what am I really saying to people? What is my material reality? To me, that's like the question the book shoves in your face is like, how much am I just rationalization selling myself in a circle to make anything like the Ubermenschian choice, and how much is, oh, you know what, there's a shitty reality, I gotta kind of live within it, these people out here have their flaws as well, and I'm another person out here, I'm just trying to make it. And then Spencer is kind of the worst case scenario where you're just a total shithead, and then you pivot on a dime when you're called out, and you pivot on a dime when you're too much of a pussy to murder people at the end of the book, which we'll get to.
Yeah, that's the end. That's the end. All right, the end is very interesting, right? Because it's either you can, based on how you're saying it, you can interpret it as a sea change or a not a sea change. If you allow me to have an aside, there's this one reason why it's okay for him to jerk off. There's this story about Voltaire, and the Voltaire is in Egypt, hanging out with a friend, and they have brothels in Egypt. But unlike other brothels in Europe, one of his friends is like, "Hey, Voltaire, you want to go to a brothel?" He's like, "Yeah, sure." He's like, "Well, this brothel's a little different.
Boys,
this one
right?
It has boys, yes."
Yeah.
And then Voltaire's like, always down for an interesting experience. Then they do it, they do the deed, and then the next day, his friend's like, "Hey, Voltaire, you want to do it again?" And Voltaire's like, once a philosopher, twice a sodomite, right? But the story is that the philosopher should have all experiences exposed to him. He should be exposed to every experience at least once. So the point being is that he has these lurid experiences, right, with sex. Especially sex is his vice. In a lot of ways, it is his vice. And also, he kind of cuts corners a lot, because when he talks about his project, they literally call it the project, he's like, "Oh, I don't want to make a YouTube video." And all those people who say that life, you should act out your beliefs, and your feet are the paintbrushes. How absurd. Obviously, the only way to live philosophy is through a giant tome of text that he posts on 3chan, right? So he's lazy. He doesn't want to live out his beliefs until the very end. And even then, well, depending on how you define his beliefs, he kind of does live out his beliefs. But he basically is a word cell. He doesn't want to be the Ubermensch. He doesn't want to live out the truly Nietzschean belief of not being a word cell, to live out your beliefs, to actually go outside and touch grass and make the grass your bitch, right? He doesn't do that. He basically is a complete, utter word cell. And it's the same thing with Crystal, and this is my complaint with the whole dating scene, is she quotes Nietzsche, and she's like, "Oh, didn't Nietzsche say, when you meet woman, bring thy whip?" And she has as a negative. Like that was the one thing that broke me out of the immersion.
No,
she's also
I saw that as a dude. Yeah, she's a hypocrite, and this is a dude who, I know who the author lives in New York, and he has probably, I imagine myself in that scene as a guy dating a chick, and I'm sure millions of guys have been through this, where you sit there and she starts rambling off some libtard platitude, and you're like, well, I better just nod along because it's our first date. I don't want to just fuck this up from get-go.
I don't know. I just think there was more of an opportunity there. Okay, she even knows she's a she's into sadomasochism. I guess was that intention like sadomasochism, but wouldn't that quote be a good thing? Would it be?
Well, it's the same with once the sadomasochism starts and he's spanking her and she's giving him instruction. And he's like, "This is an upset of the natural order," or whatever the exact wording is. It's a show of like the overall power. The novel doesn't say this directly, but the overall power structure is still not a traditionalist, whatever. And the whole sadomasochist, whatever, is like a game played on top of this existing system. And so it's all like he spun it in his own mind that this game was reality, and he was like literally jerking off to it. Whereas she was like, she knew it was a game. And she was the more mature one the whole time.
Well, to be fair, if you ever know about kink cultures, the whole spanking thing where she complains about how she's spanking it.
I don't, to be clear.
No, what you're supposed to do properly, because you can't ruin it in the middle of the scene. If you're doing a spanking, like what she did was actually kind of wrong. So, for example, if your spanking partner's not doing it properly, you kind of want to take a 5-second pause. You're not supposed to have like 1,000 criticisms. You say it like you do one long tutorial, basically. And you kind of want to go with the flow of it. Right? Because he's basically punching her ass. I understand the punching the ass and maybe not be pleasant, right? But to be fair, if you're an actually devotee of sadomasochism and you actually learned the safe words and stuff like this, so in some schools of sadomasochistic thought, she was not doing the proper way. Even in the whole communication and consent theory of sadomasochism, there was more mature ways to handle that situation than what she did.
Keep going, Gabe. I want to keep hearing your thoughts on this.
Well, no. Well, because because she says to him, you gotta lean back and swing your hand. And it's supposed to be a stinging, so it's supposed to be kind of like a you slap and then you pull away, right? It's that's the stinging kind. That's how like BDSM whips work or paddles work, right? Okay. It causes redness, but it just stings. It's the width. A lot of times you want something flat, and like sometimes studs.
Sorry. Keep going. I want to hear more.
I'm trying to educate you. Thank you very much.
Kat, what do you think about this?
Gabe, you're just the best. Thank you for this. Now, so
go ahead.
So let's move on.
Yes, please.
So
he spanks her. He moves on.
He spanks her poorly because he's not a dom, and she gets ready to leave. He starts crying like a bitch. She feels bad. Stays. Flash forward. They've been dating for 3 months. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm. So they go to DJT has recently been elected, and they get ready to go to the women's march, and so because Crystal is from the Kink scene, there are other people in that scene, and they are riding in some broken down van with Enrique. And two other women who are in a throuple with him. In this,
Hunter and Alina,
and they're all going to the women's march. And Spencer knows nothing about any of this. He's just like, it's some lefty thing, whatever.
Global Marxism.
Yes. Yeah.
Destroying the historic West.
And Enrique, who Spencer does not like, and is
because he spanked his girlfriend at a sex party in a way he thought was just a little too forward.
A little too forward to be spanked at a sex party. Yes. So nobody except for Crystal likes Spencer in this context. And Spencer interprets Enrique as making a lot of like weird domineering power plays socially with him, which is probably true, Gabe. I will say.
Yeah, I was about to say, interpret?
Probably true. He's definitely like low key bullying the shit out of him. So they go to the women's march. There's this whole thing about how Spencer doesn't know what the pink pussy hat is. And Enrique uses this his unawareness of it to make him look like more of an asshole than he normally looks. So they go to the Women's March. They're in a crowd full of people, which has plenty of Antifa guys, which he calls communist ninjas. Which is very consistently calls communist ninjas. So Crystal tells Spencer that Enrique had expressed interest in quote unquote joining their dynamic, which basically means being able to fuck Crystal, of course. And
now, Corey, this is the one difference. As soon as that bitch would have brought it up, I would have dropped her like that. All right, that's the thing that separates me and Spencer, is that he's a little bit of a simp.
Yeah.
While I'm more stone cold.
Amen, brother.
The thing that separates you is that you would have caught an assault charge. Okay. Spencer loses his fucking mind here, and has a wildly emotional reaction, which he does not realize he's being emotional, much like his experience in Nora Katz's house. He has no idea he's being emotional, and
no, he projects his crying onto others every time he cries.
Yeah,
except the
he
very
has
last
no idea. He does not realize what he is.
People tell him it's okay that you're crying. He's like, "Oh, I'm fine. It's a manly experience."
Face wet? He goes and sort of, and like he is like violating the personal space of Alina, but it's not actually in a way that would have gone poorly. This is actually something that's not really his fault. He starts tickling her, and he tickles her so much she pisses herself. And
imagine the smell.
So he's standing in the middle of the Women's March, right in front of this girl who is like laughing and screaming, "Stop, stop," who is now crying. And no one knows what's going on, and he's attracted a lot of attention, and a lot of that attention is from Antifa and from Enrique and from Hunter.
No, not Antifa, communist
ninjas. You know, basically everyone's calling for his head, except for eventually and grudgingly Crystal.
You mean the piglet?
The piglet
protects him.
He's very consistently does not it's not clear to me how unattractive Crystal is.
No, it's pretty clear. She's chunky. She's got greasy skin, but through the revelation of her breasts and their love and their romance together, she becomes a little bit more beautiful.
Yeah, I saw her as solidly okay. And then he just mentally just downgraded her into like a slave status, a helot to his pleasure.
Right. No, he retcons himself into thinking she's attractive, basically.
She had a big rack. I mean, she was doing her thing. But what was that? I want to shout out the writing of the piss scene. Cap, you had warned us because you were ahead of us because you started reading I think I was like still in the intro scenes when you had read this part. You had said that this was like a cringe in a good way scene, and I felt it so intensely during this part.
Yeah, I mean, and it's true in a lot of parts of NUTCRANKR that Baltic writes secondhand embarrassment extremely well. Like, you know, like a it's a fashionable kind of comedy somewhat, you know, like Larry David obviously is like the king.
Yeah. He gets that from Wallace, that Wallace like third eye thing. Sure. Wallace always used to do that cringe humor very well.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's executed very well, and especially very well in this scene where you're just like you feel like your myocardium is shrinking because it's so mortifying. The entire scenario is so like anxiety and embarrassment inducing. And in this case, it really, like, Spencer was not the bad guy here. So
it was an honest mistake. Like, I think it's implied that she had a bladder issue or something. Amelia.
No, it's from obesity. Sometimes with obesity, your bladder tends to be an issue.
Yeah, I don't know.
She did mention that she was.
The Enrique mentions it.
Yeah. Well, in any case, so she pisses herself. Hunter's calling for his head. Spencer had previously, fantasized about mounting Hunter and her broad shoulders. Hunter, I'm not exactly clear. They mentioned that there was a spanking scene in one of the sex parties.
The parties,
which makes it seem like, the thing is that Hunter sounds like she's a tranny. Right? Like, Hunter sounds like a tranny. Very tall, broad shoulders, repeatedly mentions
is that your lore?
Broad shoulders.
That's
no.
Interesting.
But because of the spanking scene, Spencer obviously would have known, like, would not have misinterpreted that. So,
yeah. He would have noticed the apple. He's very detail-oriented. He loves analyzing the body anatomical of the human form. He would have noticed the apple.
Yeah. But, I mean, I don't know if that was, like, something that was, like, kind of intended to be implied, or just a really tall woman or something like that.
Well, she's supposed to be like, no, Nordic women tend to be very tall because she's supposed to be like a parody of like the perfect Nordic shield maiden.
Which
like
is
Spencer,
what Spencer repeatedly calls her. But yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, like, they ride home separately. They make up. No, they don't. They share an awkward ride.
That was the most painful part, dude. I was like, please take the fucking Greyhound.
Yeah, no, and he tries to talk
that ride.
he tries to talk about, you guys want to talk about The Bachelor,
China.
You guys want to talk about the Bachelorette? Well, have you considered the rising threat of China? Look, I'm not saying that we should. No, Spencer. Yeah. Hunter has a line. No, Spencer. I don't think we should go to war with China. Look,
Enrique calls him a ring-a-ding boy.
Yeah, calls him a.
What the fuck is a ring-a-ding? What is a ring-a-ding?
What is a ring-a-ding?
I actually don't know.
It's a ring ding.
This one actually is
ring ding.
What's a ring ding?
I mean, if you don't know, you probably are one.
Oh no!
What kind of rule is that? No, in that case, Crystal's
exactly the exact. No, she knows. She knew the whole time.
She should.
Oh no!
Remember?
No, she said she didn't know. No. Remember, because she says, "I do know this ring ding," and she grabs his dick, right? And they do the 360 sex.
Oh, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, but he calls his dick the ring ding.
A ring ding is basically like a cream-filled, chocolate-covered cake, which...
So it is a Twinkie.
Oh, so just talking about
okay,
the
number one, that's not what a
that
Twinkie is, but it's a lot more like eating ass, which
he does eat the ass in
that scene. Yeah. Anyway, so there's a very awkward van ride home.
And don't forget, Crystal actually saves his life from
being
beat by the
She steps up and stops Antifa from beating the shit out of him. So they get home, they make up, everything's fine. Spencer's actually feeling great about it because she has stepped up, like she has defended him, and like pretty clearly, like they're actually forming some kind of real relationship here. So he goes out, buys some coffee, comes back. She's sitting there, and she has his laptop open and is reading the project. And somehow, this bitch is a speed reader because she got through 450 pages of screed and knows everything. So she's seen it all. He's been out for 15 minutes getting coffee. And she read.
I'm pretty sure she based it all. She probably read the first 10 pages and just assumed.
In her defense, they said some pretty horrific shit. I mean, they just called her a piglet 1,000 times.
Well, no, but sure, that's his kink name for her.
Yeah,
right?
but it's not one that she knows, because it's the one that he has in the project and in his head. And we're just used to it because we are reading what's in his head. So
yes, we have a look into his private love language. We do have that, and she doesn't. So like, he comes back from Nero's, a coffee place. He comes in. She's wearing red panties. He does a good job of keeping track of the breasts. I did have a criticism that when he saw, like, this is his arc woman, like she is his woman. Like, when he got to see her naked, because he skipped straight to the sex of her seeing naked. There should have been, like, a full scene describing him in awe and glory, like Ave Maria, of seeing her naked for the first time. Right? He just skips directly into her being naked. That's one criticism I have with him.
Well, he's not a virgin. I mean, he knows.
Well, no, but it should be a holy event for a guy like him, like seeing the curvature to angle, the little dimples on the tits. Sometimes the tits are not even angled right; they're not symmetrical. Sometimes they have like a little mole or a love mark, or sometimes like, the nipples are in different areas. Like, it's supposed to be near the bottom of the tits, but like someone like Henri Okita, her nipples are areola are like in the center of the boob.
Okay. Areola? Have you never heard that word before? You only read it?
No, it's an anatomical thing. So you got like the little baloney shape, and you got the nipple.
Yeah, the word's center. Areola. You said areola.
Yeah. That's my accent. All right. But basically, so she's violating his privacy when he comes home, and she reads his novel, his project. All right, and she is a bit irrational about the whole thing. She's very emotional. He tries to explain it to her.
Fuck? You were totally Spencer shielding, bro.
I love how this is literally.
Was she not emotional?
She definitely did.
Her face is...
She definitely did violate his privacy, but
yeah.
If you found out,
she also called him a piglet. For 1,000.
If you found out that
she wanted to get fucked by Mexican Robin Williams. All right.
Number one, Robin. Unfair to say that Robin Williams is not a guy who most women would want to get raw dogged by. That dude was was a top tier talent.
But that joke was great, by the way, when he brings up the hanging. But no, but she's crying. And, like, he thinks it's from masturbation, like a trad, virtuous, kind of, like, embodied experience of fertility and eros. Because he's walking on sunshine in there in a coffee place. He actually has a positive view of humanity. Even, like, the Puerto Ricans. He says, he was
having a great time. He was absolutely on top of the world. And, then it was a significant and precipitous fall from that high.
Yes, and there's a great part of this last scene with Enrique with the pussy hat. Like, when he jokes around with the hat, all the girls laugh, but when he tries to do it, he says the magic of the hat is gone. It's like that beautiful, like, they let you do it. The Chad, the Chad meme. It's like, hey, Stacy, nice tits in the office, and she's like, hello, HR, and the nerd does it, and she's like,
other way around.
Like, you know what I'm talking about? Them. Yeah, basically, yeah. Excuse the dyslexia, but basically, yeah. Right? Yeah. So he experiences that firsthand. And notice, Enrique's very handy with his woman during the march. But when Spencer tries to do something less sexual, yet again, it's the same thing from the Tudor house. Right? It's so hard not to... Dan Baltic edited this very well. Other than the semicolons, he knows what he's doing. He has excellent... It's hard not to take away this with a Straussian reading. Minus
right? 1 star, semicolons. Plus 1 star. Straussian reading. Straussian count 1.
Yes. But no, but think about it, this is kind of like a Gnostic thing. The demiurge of modernity is torturing. He doesn't even get to be Don Quixote. Right? Because look at how Don Quixote was interpreted. Historically, he was supposed to be a joke, but he was romanticized after the 17th century. He was taken unironically. Dostoevsky calls him a Christ-like figure, right? But in the sense of Spencer, he doesn't
Don Quixote was a LARPer, but he was LARPing a hero, and so he became a hero.
Yes. Because guess what? No, why? But why? Right? It's a causal relationship. His guiding star was a virtuous trad woman, ethereal, platonic, not of this earth, Dulcinea. He never meets Dulcinea, but everything he does it in her pure name. Thing is, Spencer is not a Platonist. He's base, right? Base as in like not based as in the good thing, base as in like of the earth, and in the cringe way, not the Teutonic way. So it's because he doesn't have this Dulcinea. All the women are flawed. All the women in this novel are Eves. He even talks about like Gwen Stefani. He mentions Gwen Stefani or like Courtney Love, right? All these women, he says he foreshadows it. He's like, I will not be her Kurt Cobain, but in his kind of way, he did kind of kill himself. With the ending, he did kind of have a spiritual Kurt Cobain ending. So he doesn't have this guiding feminine virtue to follow. So he is a fallen hero. Right, even though objectively, if Crystal married Spencer, her life would be way better than with Enrique. If Nora had him as like a love steed, if ride away on his horse, way better than the hobby horse of her husband or like the homosexual hunk.
I wouldn't go that. I wouldn't
There's
go that far.
no reason to think that. There's absolutely
Yeah,
no reason to think that.
Let me be moderate and say I think Nora's a step too far, but I think Gabe is onto something where Spencer is right that the world is corrupt and it's wrong, and he has some good ideas in theory in his sort of traditionalist view, but he doesn't apply it evenly. Is that the best way to say it?
As the communist ninjas would say, he has poor praxis.
Yes.
No, dual consciousness or something. They would say something like what? That dual. I forgot what Marx says. False consciousness.
So Crystal reads the project or some portion of the project, discovers that she's been referred to as a piglet. That doesn't like that. Also discovers that her boyfriend has all of these views that he has not shared with her and that she finds very upsetting. And she runs out. He tries to get in touch with her and is blowing up her phone pretty clearly. Says he starts cutting back and only calling her twice a day. Eventually he goes to see her sister, interprets like basic human,
the tigress.
Basic human.
He calls her the tigress.
Yeah. Interprets some basic human kindness of offering him a glass of water when he starts being
obviously seducing him,
ready to collapse because he finds out that Crystal is at Enrique's. Thinks that Crystal's sister is coming on to him. Does not work out in his favor again, of course. And
she's more rude to him than fucking Crystal is.
I mean, yes.
But she's a stranger, basically.
Yeah, she's a stranger.
Like she's never met this guy. They always met at his house, and then he comes over and tries to fucking kiss her at point blank.
What the fuck is wrong with you, you stupid weirdo? Get the fuck out of my house. Yeah. So
that was great.
He goes over to Enrique's, forces his way inside, gets fucking kidney punched, told that he will, in no uncertain terms, that Crystal does not want to see him again. Uppercuts Enrique in the balls and then kicks him in the cheek and then kicks him while he's down. One of his most
gratifying moments that he keeps replaying.
Yes, no, and not only kicks it, punches him so hard in the balls, one of the testicles apparently popped.
He imagines it. He says, I imagine it happening. Anyway. So, and then he leaves. Becomes a massive alcoholic.
And that ends the Crystal arc.
Yeah.
Of the big middle, I would say, of the novel. I don't know the exact breakdown.
Yeah.
But it seems like that's sort of the biggest chunk to me.
I like to throw in, by the way, that it ties in because he even references that him laying down on that apartment floor reminds him of the Tudor house, right?
Yeah,
and then
he flashes back to the time he got punched outside of Nora's house. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, Crystal is his Helen of Troy, Like the conflict between Enrique, because the thing is, like Crystal plays both sides. She saves Spencer, but then she saves Enrique. Much like the relationship between Helen and between the two suitors. Oh, Nora. Remember how Nora says she split between Hector and between Achilles, right? You have obviously.
So you're saying that Spencer is based Menelaus? And,
yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
And Enrique is Paris.
I mean, argue against it, right? I mean, who can prove it?
Well,
right. It fits because he constantly references the Odysseus and Penelope in Greek, not Don Quixote. That's the only thing he doesn't reference. He references Ernst Jünger, Keats, a lot of German literature, a lot of obscure. He's obsessed with German literature and German folklore.
Unless you get anything else on the Crystal arc, otherwise I'll take the I call it the Broken Spencer last arc.
Wrap him up.
Yeah. All right. So the final arc of it after the breakup, just very nasty breakup with Crystal, Spencer begins taking 2 moderately priced liquor mid-morning drinks in his eminently serviceable apartment every day, and he just starts posting more and more on NUTCRANKR, which is sort of a porn hub.
Because he got banned. He got banned from 3chain.
He got banned from 3chain for spamming too much, which I could totally imagine. I've seen this dude on 4chan before who just you know,
that's where we met.
Not
Gabe.
saying F. Gardner, but yeah, or Gabe.
Hey,
you're not that prolific. It's true.
F. Gardner does not have the moral capability to lick Spencer's left testicle.
We're keeping that in.
All right, do not
So
dare
true.
compare it to him.
So true.
Thank you very much.
Call of the nut.
Call of the crank.
Call of the crank. So yeah, he gets banned on 3chain, starts posting on NUTCRANKR. He gets his collection of nut buddies, which honestly I could have gone with this section going even longer than it was, because it was pretty great of him just being himself on his own. He starts building up a small following. He gets banned on NUTCRANKR eventually as another amazingly good secondhand cringe encounter with a
when he goes into
executive
the
assistant
NUTCRANKR offices
at NUTCRANKR HQ, which is hilarious. And then he resolves, I'm going to go buy a gun and become a shooter somewhere. He doesn't even know where. He's like, I'm going to go drive down to West Virginia from New York. He goes to some kind of gun fair, gets a shitty gun, where the guy even calls him out, like, you're acting really suspicious. Like, you don't need to put on an act for me.
Hello, fellow trustworthy citizen.
Yeah.
This nigga glows in the dark.
I will say one thing. This is my minor criticism here. He calls it a Glock 9 and mentions that there's a safety at one point. Glocks are numbered. There's no Glock 9. You could say perhaps it was a Glock 9mm. That might be more appropriate, but they also don't have fucking safeties. Like, there are no safeties on a Glock. So.
Well, I guess that's either that's a genuine fuck up on Baltic.
Dance
Baltic
from New York. Dance from New York. Just saying.
Yeah,
that's true.
Probably never held a gun in his life.
Yeah.
So, but he can always hide behind a fact about Spencer just misinterpreted or something like that.
Well, yeah. I don't know what Spencer thought he was doing when he checked to make sure the safety was on.
Yeah, he might have misunderstood the gun, but it could be a genuine fuck up. I wouldn't be surprised.
I mean,
or too
would not be the
disturbed
first
by
time
it,
that's
whatever.
would not be the first time that fuck up has been made. But
yeah, I've handled these number of 9mm. I've never held a Glock, so I can't. I didn't catch my eye at all as someone that's just I've had like Ruger and other random shit.
EDC Glock 43. Anyway,
what else? Okay, so he gets the gun, goes to the May Day monkey parade or whatever it's called, sex party. He finds that, resolves to go there, which is one of the most interesting parts in terms of your empathy towards him as a main character. Is, he basically becomes like a stone cold killer in his mind, at least, of like, I'm gonna go massacre people. And he even has like on a subway ride, like, am I gonna shoot this girl? Am I gonna just keep going? What am I gonna do? And then he shows up at the party, the sex party, and then he sees Crystal and he just completely pussies out, essentially. He's like, oh, how can I do it? The real act of bravery is in forgiveness and so such and such.
And I didn't kill anyone. It would just all blow over. He literally says, "Oh, it probably just all blow over."
Yes, I'll run outside. He gets clotheslined by the bouncer. He goes to prison. That was already covered in the flashback at the very beginning of the novel, and then instead, shockingly, we jump right ahead to the end. I forget how many years in the future it is. It's like 2022 or something like that. It's like several years after the 2016 timeline.
Oh, 2023 actually.
2023. Okay, so he's out. He's been out, and he's basically now a minor celebrity on a de-radicalization tour, and basically he's given up the project, capital P, and now he's on the Spencer project, which is all about self-improvement, take care of yourself, rather than worshiping the old glories, the long dead past that's unsalvageable. He's like, you know what, take care of yourself. And he basically makes out like a bandit. He's got money. He's got a nicer apartment, more than eminently serviceable. He has like a really nice high-end apartment now. He has a more beautiful Nora Katzian, Nora Blossom-esque girlfriend.
Yeah.
And he's doing sold-out speaking tours, which is an incredible end. And that is
who knew a
closed
Jew
curtains.
could have such beautiful blonde hair.
See,
Quote,
that's
unquote,
a hint.
slightly curly.
Yeah, that is it. There's a lot of interesting interpretations. Like, this is American Psycho tier ending in terms of interpretations.
Oh yeah, the project was going rather well.
So, like, what is your take on the ending, Dave? I know you were very harped on the ending. Like, you think it's a very big character reveal.
I think it's a huge character reveal that he did not change. Period.
Yeah.
From page one, he's always been selfish, self-serving, and he has viewed his philosophical outlook has always been the outcome of his own tortured circular thought patterns to be self-serving. And so now it's just, he went to prison. He's like, how can I make something out of this? I have these crazy emails. How can I make something out of this? That's my view of Spencer.
Yeah, he learned to grift.
Cap?
He learned to grift.
Based.
That
was me.
That's
he's a
come
grifter.
on. You think that's it?
Yeah, he's
Just
obviously grifting. Yeah, he's absolutely grifting. I mean, Spencer is 100% grifting.
There is, I think, roughly 3.5 ways you can interpret the ending.
This is an interesting number. I'm ready to hear it.
Roughly, as far as I can think of right now. So there is that ending, right, where he is self-serving, because he retcons everything to be trad and based, and like whatever the hell, even if it's clearly not Nietzschean, like being a word cell instead of acting, he says, oh, it's Nietzschean, or using Dionysian as a slur instead of a positive, or stuff like this. See, he does not know the full canon of Nietzsche's work, but or other things, he oh, actually jerking off to my ex-girlfriend getting fucked by Enrique is actually based, because in a way I'm coming on them in a demeaning way. I'm doing a bukkake on all of them from my height as a Faustian man, that kind of thing. So he retcons his behavior. So there is the first tier reading of that, which is, oh, he's just grifting. He follows incentive structures. So he just followed the incentive structure of being, oh, I de-radicalized, and his thoughts in his head, right? Patrick Bateman narration style is like, she's pretty blonde for a Jew, right? So he's still internally based, but he's obsessed. He is taken down the crusade. In order to live in this fallen world, he has to let himself be fallen, right? So the clown who tries to warn everyone about the fire, he just kind of accepts the fire, right, and lets everyone burn along with himself. So you can have it that way. It's either it's a pure comedy where he's just a sleazy bull. It's either a tragedy where this potential Quixote, lost without a pure feminine, let down by no feminine figures to look up for, he gets debased along with the world and just follows the incentive structure, like Bateman. Basically, he gives up trying at the end of American Psycho. He's like, you know what, we're in a shallow, fuck it, right? I don't care anymore, right? There is no exit. Spencer's the same way. There is no exit. Don't even bother anymore. I'm just going to follow the incentive, make a shit ton of money. I got my girl. I'm still from a very respectable liberal arts college, and I'm just going to ride this gravy train.
Okay, so that's the grifting ending.
That's two endings.
Yeah.
That's two endings right there. The third ending is the sexual ending. If you notice, he did do homosexual acts in prison.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can't remember. Does his balls get injured or no? I can't remember.
No,
I
not
think it's
confirmed.
temporary, basically.
Not
like
confirmed.
he definitely gets punched in them for sure.
I'm
but
sure that his nuts got cranked.
Yeah, they got cranked, bro. But I think he still has functioning testicles.
See, that's the ambiguity. I think in a lot of ways, it also might be a eunuch ending, where because lust was his biggest sin, right? Lust is what got him all into his mess. So ironically, if he actually got eunuched, right, like Nero's boyfriend, or who his name is, I forget, the castrated boy. If he becomes a eunuch and becomes castrated, and he's free of his sin in a sense of this like metaphorical castration. Like, he becomes castrated. And ironically, it's still a red-pilled ending. Because he becomes a libtard because he lacks no balls. His nuts get cranked, right? So, that's the third secret, possible hidden ending. Where he is free of his lust. He's free of his ball and chain, right? Of his testicles. And by doing that, he's free from the haze of lust. And it fucks up his brain so much. He still has the same incentive structure following, but for a liberal outflow instead of a trad outflow. So that's the three endings.
Wait, can you recap it? So there's the grifter ending, there's the eunuch ending. What was the second one?
The second ending is that basically he's purely a grifter, where he doesn't care about his beliefs, or he's a fallen messiah, or he's a fallen Quixote, where basically instead of having a Dulcinea, throughout his all the failures of women in his life had led him to this. And he just says, fuck it. Instead of warning people, I'm just going to go with the flow. There's a difference. It's same in effect as the grifter ending, but the moral message is different.
Oh, that he hasn't changed his beliefs. He's just grifting. Yes. I mean, that's what I think. I think he has not changed his beliefs. He's just grifting.
Because of the Jew line, right? And because that's the one line he says that's classic Spencer. Is the Jew one.
I think he changes his patterns. I guess I agree. I think it's probably the second ending most of all, because he hasn't fundamentally changed his beliefs. Yeah, he makes the Jewish comment. He makes a comment early on when he meets the well-known, quote unquote, the well-known podcaster, where he says like, "Oh, I didn't actually believe what I just said, but I'm saying it because it's like the most effective thing for the Spencer Project."
Yeah.
But ultimately, I don't know. I guess I don't see a huge difference. Like, yeah, he's adopted whatever's most effective to make money out of the situation, but he's still
he's either he's a grifter for greed or a grifter of guilt. That's the fundamental two differences. Because how did he become so charismatic, by the way? Right? There's also the 0.5 ending, which is the whole classic hallucination one, which is a fucked ending. But basically, so he's gotten so good at Machiavellian manipulation that he suddenly is can convince any motherfucker that he's changed and have speaking tours and be on a podcast when he couldn't convince a woman to tie her own shoe, basically previously.
Yeah, so those ADL connections, bro. You just say, "Oh, I'm a de-radicalization expert," and all of a sudden you're doing college speaking tours. Yeah, no, I think I would lead towards the conscious grifter angle of your three options. Like, he knows what he's doing, but I don't think he is torn in knots over what he's doing. I think he, like I said at the start, I think he's just self-serving, and he can twist himself to rationalize anything.
Yeah, and he can absolutely.
Wow, that's the good thing about that's one good thing really about Baltic, is that there's so many layers. There's hidden layers to Baltic's writing. It's so straight-laced in a lot of ways, but it's so clean, and the rules and the parameters are so crystal clear. Right, because it's not like Holy Hunt or our previous reviews, where sometimes we're confused about the POV or like who's speaking. No, the rules, even for this unreliable narrator, is very clear. The prose is very clear. It's very sharp, and it's we all want more, but in a lot of ways, this is perfectly paced. Because I can definitely see if you're not in the mood for it, and like the same joke punchline kind of theme over and over again, it could have really worn out as welcome. Like it's kind of perfectly paced and perfect amount of length.
Yeah, I'd rather want 2 more chapters than 2 less. I think it's a good. It is a good pace. And so I think we covered the entire plot overall. I have 1 or 2 closing questions. Do you have anything else, guys, on the final arc of Broken Spencer, Gooning, the school shooter episode of the Spencer tale?
It was there was one nice little touch with his family where he actually forgives his parents. He says he forgives his parents, which was actually kind of sweet. But he's on his way.
What?
Yeah, remember?
Wait, you think that was sweet?
He forgives it. Yeah, if I remember quickly, the word is literally forgive.
Forgives his parents for what?
Oh, well, basically, they stop. He was on his way because he even says, they should feel proud, a sense of melancholy, like a tragedy and hope and proud of what he's about to do, right? And then he forgives because they've stopped supporting their son, right? They think he's a failure. In a sense.
but you do understand that he's the one doing the thing, and he doesn't have a right to forgive them for anything because they haven't done anything.
I don't know. Just because they didn't do anything doesn't mean you can still forgive them, despite the fact they didn't do anything to redeem themselves. I still think you just redeem themselves.
He's too base for you, Cap. Don't bother. Just kneel.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. It was in character. It was in character for him.
It was obvious. Yes, it was obviously in character for him. Yes. It was a very, very well done. Like just another this this guy is completely disconnected from reality. Yeah.
Oh, also, real quick. Sorry. Real quick. He also for the first time during the school shooter arc, is that he actually cries awaringly. He says he cries like a stoic, but he knows he actually is aware that he is in fact crying.
That is true. Yeah.
So there's a hint of a character change. Of a genuine, because that's a seismic shift. He cries a lot. This is the first time where he openly and knowingly cries.
So we've gone through the plot, soup to nuts. I had 1 or 2 questions for you guys. So at the end, for Spencer, we've talked a lot about his morality and all that. Are we happy for him? Are you happy for him at the end? Or do you think it's a tragic ending for Spencer?
Cap, what would you say?
I would say that he is probably at the highest point of his life. Yes, I'd say he's probably doing the best. I'd say the project is going rather well.
So you think for him it's a happy ending? So basically, there's 2 things: is the moral of the story for his internal arc, but for the book itself, Nutcranker. What is the moral ending? What is the message of Nutcranker?
I guess we'll have to find out in Nutcranker 2.
Yeah, the second nut, the renutting.
Yeah, the left nut
of darkness. I would read that in a heartbeat. Left nut of darkness. You owe us royalties now.
He gets a testicles because he is a eunuch. Baltic confirms the eunuch ending theory. He gets a testicle transplant from a black man, so now he's literally hung.
Great.
The left nut of darkness.
And his child is born as will it come out dark? Will it come out pale? Like what's going to go on here?
Black Cranker. That's the sequel.
It's the middle handle.
I hope we'll see if we get Dan on for an interview. We got to put these hard hitting questions to him and find out what the eunuch ending's validity is. Gabe, I have a theory on the happy ending or not. I want to hear yours before I ramble on mine.
To be honest, this is the only work of Baltic I have ever read. I think he's written short stories and some essay pieces, but based on what little I gathered, I do think because you also have to think of the audience. I don't know if I'm making it more complex than it is, but I have a lot of faith in Baltic because he's a fellow Wallace fan. All right, so he likes good shit. So, the ending I do think is a winking ending because it is based on Confederacy of Dunces, right? And from my mimetic knowledge of Confederacy of Dunces, it is a pure comedy novel. There's it's a pure comedy novel. There's not necessarily any character arc in Confederacy of Dunces. To my pop culture knowledge of Confederacy of Dunces.
Yeah, Ignatius does not learn anything.
Right. So, yeah, in that way he grows. I'm battling between the endings in my head. Because yet again, him being a grifter his entire time, I can imagine a film adaptation. Ironically enough, he gets what he wanted. All he wanted was attention, money, fame, and a woman, and he's not actually a disciplined thinker of philosophy. The incel, it's like the transmaxing, right? The incel gets laid by transmaxing, right? Doing the opposite of his beliefs in a lot of ways by becoming a woman. This is the philosophical version of transmaxing. All right, I do have a inclination, despite my theories of the tragic, Messiah of the world theory, of him being a grifter, but a grifter with guilt. I do like kind of the cheeky wink and a nod, purposeful grifter ending. So I kind of do think the regular grifter ending is canonical. But for the book itself, I do think it is... there's no message to NUTCRANKR, I think, in a lot of ways. It's either an opportunity for people to laugh at themselves, it's just kind of like a self-awareness thing, this concept of self-awareness. And if you're hyper self-aware, you're willing to laugh at yourself and be like, okay, LOL, so true, King. Then you can either be, is this purely entertainment, an inside joke amongst us? Or it's a Chad Yes thing, where it's Walter's idea of doing something ironically, like being religious ironically. At the end of the day, if you do something ironically enough, it becomes sincere. So that's the only reason, because I know he's a Wallace fan, and because of that quote, I do think it's he's having his cake and eat it too, where it's both a comedy, but also a deeper meaning of enlightenment as well. So I do think he has sincere intentions. But it's mostly, if you want to have it pure icing, if you want to avoid the Straussian reading, you can. So at the end of the day, laugh along and have fun and let it wash over you. I think that's what I'd say.
I think it's a sad ending. I think it's supposed to be you're seeing a corrupt person adopt a false face to make a profit. And I don't think any of the other characters are supposed to be necessarily enlightened. They're better people than Spencer. Even Crystal, the pig that she is a better person than he is. I guess it's almost a challenge to you as a reader of like, how sincere am I in my LARPy beliefs about, monarchy or whatever, God knows what. And if you're not, then just be upfront with it, even rather than saying, am I just doing this for personal profit, even if it's in my own head, like Spencer's doing.
Because we're like with us, we're very self-aware. Like the three of us are very self-aware.
Yeah. Okay.
So we can interpret this properly and play with it. And one of the other questions I had for y'all is actually, do you think this is a period piece? Or because because objectively it's kind of dated. All the references.
Yeah, it's so 2016.
Could you read this 10 years from now?
Well, I mean, Baltic did he did write it a while ago. Like he tried to get it published traditionally. Yeah, really? Yeah. It was sort of like put on the shelf for a bit, from what I understand. And yeah. So he eventually ended up just going ahead with the whole online right wing thing and getting it out through Terror House. But I think it's still intelligible, and I think it's still intelligible in the same way that, maybe future readers would not get the same so very now sorts of readings. But if again you are both mental cripples for not having read Confederacy of Dunces, and I both pity and look down on you for it. But that book feels like it was written last year. Like it's insanely timely. Like it's frankly fucking eerie how how timely Confederacy of Dunces feels. That book only got more relevant since it was written. And I mean, it's plausible people could say the same thing about this. And I don't want to oversell it too much. I mean, Confederacy won a Pulitzer Prize in literature.
What does that before he offed himself or before?
Books written by guys don't win.
I'm pretty sure it was
Prize
after he
anymore,
killed himself before it got properly published.
Yeah, The Confederacy of Dunces has this insane publishing cycle where his mom had the manuscript and bullied a literary agent to publish it, and then it won the Pulitzer Prize.
Then that in itself could be a great fucking story.
Well, it is, because it's in Confederacy of Dunces, which is basically because Confederacy of Dunces is like pseudo autofiction. The protagonist Ignatius and his mom have there's this very codependent, overbearing relationship, which is apparently what the Toole family was like.
Shout out Art of Darkness.
Art
of Darkness did a great episode on it, actually. Yeah.
Oh, did they? Yeah, no, I bet they did. They're a much better podcast than we are.
Much less intoxicated when they record.
A lot more boring.
Well,
So you would say there's a deeper meaning to Confederacy. There's actually, because I actually, a part of me actually does think this will not age well. This is of a time. I do think this might fall into being a period piece. Actually, Cap, out of curiosity, do you think there's anything deeper in NUTCRANKR, or is it pure just entertainment?
I mean, I think it's saying things. I mean, to me, it's a story about someone who's dishonest with themselves and with the world, and someone who is a person who is morally wanting and lacks any sort of compass to correct themselves.
That's his biggest flaw. He's
the issue is that he's desperate for human connection, right? He's desperate for human connection. He will literally take it wherever he can find it, do whatever he needs to in order to receive it. But it leads him down paths that are hazardous to him and hazardous to his long-term, happiness, so to speak. But also at the end, he is at the zenith of the story. He ends on the high note, and he's being less honest, in my interpretation, than he ever has been in the past. So rather than just concealing his chudliness, he's an apostate, right?
The mark of a comedy is ending on that high note, right? Cutting before the tragic ending of him dying with his Jewish wife cursing him, or the divorce, or God knows what comes next. But
well, wait for NUTCRANKR 2.
God, I hope this NUTCRANKR. Well, I don't want to put it in a box. I think Dan could do a lot of cool stuff. So I want to wrap up.
Doesn't need to be that, Dan.
Yeah, I would be. Yeah, exactly. I'd be cool with something totally different. If he does the Dark Nut Rises or whatever, that I would be totally game for it. But I think I think a fresh slate would be just as good.
I would prefer a fresh slate. I'm very curious what he can do out of straight comedy. He has a great voice. There are a little bit of prose. I didn't even do my usual prose porn segment, but he's generally good at prose. There's little prose there is.
I highlighted some quotes. We didn't have time because we ran long. But yeah, there was some real. I would say almost every page has a banger line or so, or just something that's really. It definitely was serious thought was put into everything. The last line I would leave you guys on, because we're running a little long. A final game. Fuck, marry, kill. Crystal, Nora, Laura. What's your choices?
Oh, you bastard! Fuck, Cap, you go first. Anything on this?
All right. I would. Man, I can't go for the Jewess. All right, I would fuck Nora, I would marry Laura, and I would kill Crystal.
Ooh. Okay. Okay.
What would God do? I'll give you mine. I would fuck Crystal, kill Nora. No, I don't want to marry Laura. I would fuck Crystal, kill Laura, marry Nora. There we go.
Okay, that's something very simple. I was gonna fucking do that, right? So, Laura, she's unhealthy. My kid can inherit diabetes.
Yeah, you don't want to stick with her too long.
And doesn't have the fertile mindset. That's also the tragic comedy of this. She's built for fertility, but her mind is barren as her thoughts.
Lori.
So kill Lori. Fuck, just for the sake of the milkers, right? The milkers are transcended, but they're attached. It's the wings of an angel attached to like roadkill, right? And the wings are the breasts. So.
Yeah, I got what you were doing there. Thanks for clarifying, though.
So just give a little bit of a suckle on the breast just one time, on Crystal, then and probably if you're strict enough and you have enough of a moral prerogative and you know how to properly do seduction, right? And because the thing is, it's a good thing he ended up with his own version of Nora, because post podcast fucking Spencer probably could have harassed or like seduced the earlier Nora, right? So Nora would be a good wife because she's intellectual, she's competent, she's pretty, she's funny. She just lacks a moral character. You kind of need to be like Abraham to her, to the Sarah, and be the moral guide to her. That's what she just needs, a moral guide, like him in a way. I think this pseudo-redeemed Spencer could probably seduce her properly. So yeah, Nora would be a good wife if you properly give her moral instruction. So I believe Nora would be my wife.
Peace.
We can talk about literature.
Yeah, you're going to get cucked. So
Poor Greg.
Greg had it coming.
Yeah, he shouldn't have traveled for work. What a cuck.
It's the one thing that Spencer was right about. Greg had it coming.
All right. Anything else, guys?
I think we got it.
I think we
cranked out
fuck
this
you!
nut.
I was going to say that. I think the
Cucked again.
I think the fertile fields of this discussion have been seeded.
We'll call it there. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. Thank you. And
pick up your own physical copy of NUTCRANKR. It is important that you feel the pages in your hand.
Please use the affiliate link for sure. That's the best way to get it. Trust me. Doesn't cost you anything extra. Gives old Cap, Gabe, and Davey here a few
couple pennies to pay for
a couple of shekels, a couple of peanuts.
All right, good night. That's a wrap.
So long and good night. Or sometimes, like, the nipples are different areas. Like, it's supposed to be near the bottom of the tits, but like someone like Henri Okita, her nipples are Arola are like in the center of the boob.